Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my desk for a long overdue book update. I have been just unable to sit down and film any book reviews. So now I'm doing them all at once. So prepare to settle in. I've got a bit more of a full aesthetic going on here because we are deep into October now in the spooky season, which fits some of the books in my update. These books you see here are not all of the books because I do have some audiobooks that I don't have physical copies of, so I'll just throw those on the screen when we get to them. So without further ado and a big long rambling intro, let's jump into the reviews. I'll move these off to the side and pull them out one at a time. Okay, so just to preface this, we're going to be going through books 82 to 94 of 100. So we're getting really close to the 100 mark, and I'm hoping that I get to the 100 by the end of this year. So that I can kind of finish with this series and just do something else. For right now, we do have to finish this. So, book 82 was End of Story by A.J. Finn. And if not the last, one of the last videos on my channel was starting this book with me. And so I remember being really excited to read it. And I can say that this is one I did really enjoy. These books on this list that we're going to go over tonight kind of run the gamut of were really good to were just plain really bad. But this one, we're starting off on a high note. So this book was really good. Let me read you what it's about, and then I'll just kind of do really brief summaries or kind of mini reviews because there's so many books. But I'll be dead in 3 months. Come tell my story. So writes Sebastian Trapp, reclusive mystery novelist, to his longtime correspondent Nikki Hunter, an expert in detective fiction. With mere months to live, Trapp invites Nikki to his spectacular San Francisco mansion to help draft his life story. While living alongside his beautiful second wife, Diana, his wayward nephew, Freddie, and his protective daughter, Madeline. Soon, Nikki finds herself caught in an irresistible case of real-life detective fever. 20 years earlier, on New Year's Eve 1999, Sebastian's first wife and teenage son vanished from different locations, never to be seen again. Did the perfect crime writer commit the perfect crime? And why has he emerged from seclusion 2 decades later to allow a stranger to dig into his past? As Nikki attempts to weave together the strands of Sebastian's life, she becomes obsessed with discovering the truth, while Madeline begins to question what her beloved father might actually know about that long-ago night. And when a corpse appears in the family's koi pond, both women are shocked to find that the past isn't gone. It's just waiting. Which is our kind of bite to get you into the story here on the front of the cover. So I loved this book. I thought it was so good. I remember thinking, and some people who have read this book are going to be like, how dare you make that comparison? But I remember recalling the way that the author uses language to describe a location and really brings it to life, really immerses the reader in the setting, and the feeling or the characters experiencing in that setting was the introduction the introductory chapter to A Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, I remember having that same kind of feeling of just like really appreciating the style of writing. So this was a great mystery, and I will 100% own I had no idea where it was going. I was constantly trying to guess who the murderer was, or like what the mystery to the deaths of the author's first family was. And I didn't really until the very end. I was just like, I'm not sure. I don't know which way this is gonna go. But I really enjoyed it. I did look at the reviews of this on Goodreads afterwards, and I was surprised they were so mixed. And I guess that just goes to everyone's particular taste. Some people don't appreciate the particular writing style of this author very much, whereas I found it was really fit my reading style. So this one was great, and I would definitely recommend you pick it up. Brief aesthetics review: absolutely despise the jacket of this book. I hate it. It is kind of, with the orange, eye-catching, but as a relation to the actual story content, absolutely hate it. Also, just as a general aesthetics, it's not appealing to me. This book jacket, it's so like kind of generic and says nothing about the story. I don't understand the choice. I don't see where it came from, other than the fact that like it's about someone writing the memoir of another author, so kind of pen writing on a page. But they could have done something else that just would have been so much more appropriate to the actual story. So not a fan of the book jacket. And when I read it, I did actually take the jacket off the book, just because I had such a like adverse feeling towards the book jacket that I didn't want it to impact my reading of the story. So yeah, that's all for the first one. Let's jump in to the next one. We're just going to keep moving right along here, try and keep things flowing. So the next book, for a hard pivot of genre, was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. This was the first book by her I had ever read. Romance isn't my typical genre that I gravitate towards, but I did go down a bit of a TikTok book talk kind of rabbit hole after this, which you'll see in like the series of books that follow to this one. Just because I kept seeing so much about them, like they kept popping up in bits of my social media where I'm not barely on social media. So I was like, this is permeating the book world so much. Let me see what it was about. So you'll see that trend in the next couple of books. But this book was the first of my kind of mini romance binge, and I actually found this one fine. It was very like fun, more lighthearted than all the other ones that come afterwards. And I think the writing style was fine. So let me tell you what it was about. Maya Kilgore is 23 and still in the process of figuring out her life. Connor Harkness is 38, and Maya cannot stop thinking about him. It's such a cliche. It almost makes her heart implode. Older man and younger woman, successful biotech guy and struggling grad student, brother's best friend, and the girl he never knew existed. As Connor loves to remind her, the power dynamic is too imbalanced. Any relationship between them would be problematic in too many ways to count, and Maya should just get over him. After all, he has made it clear that he wants her gone from his life. But not everything is as it seems, and cliches sometimes become plot twists. When Maya's brother decides to get married in Taormina, and she and Connor end up stuck together in a romantic Sicilian villa for over a week. They are on the beautiful Ionian coast, between ancient ruins, delicious foods, and natural caves. Maya realizes that Connor might be hiding something from her, and as the destination wedding begins to erupt out of control, she decides that a summer fling might be just what she needs, even if it's a problematic one. So, yeah, I think this was perfectly fine. I enjoyed it. I'm going to keep it as a book in my bookshelf. The aesthetic choice, it kind of falls into this current popular stylizing of books, which I'm not a huge fan of. This one isn't so bad. I think it aesthetically very much represents the location of the story, and the colors are nice and popping, and that's all good. This part, the way they've done the title is a little bit strange, but you know, I can't really say anything super negative about it. So that's that one. Now the next couple I don't have copies of, so I'm going to put them on the screen. The first book was Till Summer Do Us Part. And this book was terrible. And it was terribly written. The characters were infuriating. The dynamic of the relationship was just ridiculous. I felt invested in it in no way at all. It was just bad. It was so bad that I actually returned the audiobook, which I have never done before in my life, but I actively disliked this book so much that I was like, I don't want this in my catalog. I don't want to ever see this again. So that concludes my review of that book. So the next 3 books aren't completely in order, but I'm going to do them all together because they're set. They were Butcher and Blackbird, Leather and Lark, and Scythe and Sparrow. So we'll do the first one, Butcher and Blackbird, the breakout kind of popular success of, it's not her first book, but it's the one that blew up, by Bryn Weaver. So this is on the screen here for you now. I liked this book. I thought it was so much fun. It is very graphic, so there are content warnings at the beginning of all of her books for trigger warnings and like particular content that you might want to avoid or be sensitive to. But I thought it was so much fun. I thought the idea of it was so much fun. I think the banter of the characters was fun. The particulars of the spicy scenes are very graphic in more than one way, and skewed to like probably a very particular taste that might not be of a lot of people. So that I could have probably been tampered back some, but the substance of the story and the actual story itself I really enjoyed and had a lot of fun with. The next one, which in the series, which is Leather and Lark, I didn't like this book. I didn't like it. I'm trying to remember. The name of the brother, and I can't. But the brother that is in this story, I found, I just really didn't like him. Lachlan, that's his name. And I just found him like kind of dense. And I also didn't really like Lark that much. So the fact that I didn't really like the main characters, and I think their story was just very, I don't know, it just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy this one for like on a level of different reasons. So that's kind of my mini review of that one. Then Scythe and Sparrow I would put in between the other two. So I liked it more than Leather and Lark, but I didn't like it as much as Butcher and Blackbird. I still can't figure out why the title in this one, why they've given the kind of nickname to the brother as Scythe, because he's a doctor and it doesn't really relate. I think it is just for the flow, like, I don't know, Scalpel and Sparrow probably doesn't really have the same ring to it. But yeah, I think this one had kind of a similar fun back and forth between the characters that the first one had. So that was nice, but I didn't enjoy the story as much because it was kind of like the actions of Rose in particular just made absolutely no sense to me. The level of just kind of disregard and awareness of what she was doing and like how she was going to be successful in it made absolutely no sense. Like climbing into the back of some guy's truck with your leg in a full cast thinking you're gonna take him out, like it made no sense. So there was a bit of like kind of inability to suspend disbelief for the story that played a role in me not enjoying it as much. Not that any of them are like extremely realistic, but that's how I would tier them. I would go recommend Butcher and Blackbird, then Scythe and Sparrow, and then Leather and Lark if you feel like you need another one, maybe. They do kind of tie into each other in the back end, so if you don't read them in order, it might seem a couple of things out of place or have a little bit of spoilers, but not enough that it would ruin the stories. So that's my general reviews of those. So to conclude the kind of TikTok, book talk, obsession, dark romance books, the last one in that series was not in that series, in my adventures into delving into this realm, was Lights Out by Vanessa Allen. This is another kind of very particular situation type book. But you know what? It was good. It was like, it's again really dark themes and content warnings and descriptive of violence and spice. So just know that if you're picking up any of these last couple of books that I mentioned, strong adult themes, not for young readers. But yeah, so this one was really kind of hard stalker vibes, but not in the way that it's like like good stalker, I guess is how you would describe it. But yeah, so if you are reading the description of this book on the screen right now and it seems like something you might be interested in, then I would recommend it to you. But with all the caveats of like the violence and spice disclaimers, if those aren't things you are wanting to read about, then avoid it. At its heart, it is a dark romance. So, yeah, I don't really know how to review those. So that's just where I'm going to leave it. And then I'm going to get back to like my more regular type of books that I read. Up next was A Perfect Bind by Dorothy St. James. True Beckett succeeded in building a secret book room in her now bookless library where book lovers from lovely Cypress, South Carolina, can rejoice in the printed word. She's been working hard to maintain the little library downstairs while keeping her real job upstairs in the Bookless Technology Center. The last thing she needs is a mysterious vandal who seems intent on breaking into her book-filled sanctuary and creating chaos. The nasty interloper doesn't steal anything, but brutalizes the books, knocking them off the shelves and damaging them. A patron tells True that for years he's heard rumors of a poltergeist that haunts the library, determined to scare off raiders. True is certain it's hogwash, but who might be vandalizing the beautiful books she fought so hard to protect? When a dead body shows up right behind the library, True is certain it's not a ghost, but a cold-blooded killer, and she and her trusty tabby, Dewey Decimal, will need to uncover. So this is very much in the theme of very early books that I did in the 100 books, kind of like you're in an airport, you grab it to read on a plane type thing. It's just kind of your straight basic mystery. I would say the writing wasn't great, and kind of the mystery wasn't great. I have another one in this series that I haven't read yet sitting on my bookshelf, and I gotta say I am not excited to pull that one off my shelf after reading this one. Aesthetically, I love the cover of this book. It very much gives me like Wishbone Mysteries vibes. The cat doesn't really play a huge role. I actually found it kind of annoying. The main character of True, she drove me up a wall. So insecure and kind of needy, lacking self-confidence, but at the same time, like being, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. Her complete disregard for like the interest that the cop had in her was just, I was like, this is absurd. You would never be this dense in real life. And I wasn't rooting for her to get the guy. It's not like a romance, it's a mystery with an element of romance, but I was just kind of like, nah, I don't see it. I don't want them to get together. So yeah, that's this one. I would say I wouldn't really recommend it. It's not really that good. So that sums up that one. Up next, we had, oh gosh, we're really going down a rabbit hole with this one. The Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown. I got this, I pre-ordered this book. Why? I'm not really sure. I'll give you a brief history of my reading of Dan Brown. I've read all of his books. When I was a teenager, I read Digital Fortress, Deception Point, Da Vinci Code, and Angels and Demons. And then when he started publishing more books in the Dan Brown series. I read those as well. So those would be because I can't remember the titles of them. The Lost Symbol, Inferno in Origin. I didn't like those books. So I haven't liked 3 of the 5 of the Dan Brown series, and yet I still keep reading them because I hold out hope that we will return to the era of the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. And I can confidently say I'm done. I am done reading, not necessarily Dan Brown. If he comes out with a non-Robert Langdon book, I might check that out, because Digital Fortress and Deception Point were really good books, but those are older books. I despised this book so much. I was so mad. So let me read you the jacket and tell you what it's about, and then I can kind of get into the actual review. So, Robert Langdon, esteemed professor of symbology, has traveled to Prague to attend a groundbreaking lecture by Catherine Solomon, a prominent Nordic scientist with whom he has recently begun a romantic relationship. Catherine is on the verge of publishing a breakthrough book that contains explosive scientific discoveries about the nature of human consciousness, revelations that threaten to disrupt centuries of established belief. When a brutal murder catapults the trip into chaos, Catherine suddenly goes missing, and her manuscript is destroyed. Desperate to find the woman he loves, Langdon embarks on a thrilling race through the mystical landscape of Prague, ruthlessly hunted by a powerful organization and a chilling assailant sprung from the city's ancient mythology. As the action expands to London and New York, Langdon plunges into the dual worlds of futuristic science and historical lore, navigating a labyrinth of codes and symbols, and finally uncovering a shocking truth about a secret project that will forever change the way we think about the human mind. And if you're wondering why I kind of stumbled through reading that, I'm now noticing some of the letters in this are bolded. Can you see that? The R, the H, the F, the E. I wonder if there's some weird secret code in here. Let me just see. Why you are... That doesn't spell anything. It could be some weird kind of cipher or something, because that's like a theme in the books, but that's not a rabbit hole I'm going down right now. Okay, so that's what this book's about. Aesthetically, I love it. I love the jacket design. I love the color scheme. Does it necessarily relate to the story? Not really. I love the maps included on the inside. This book is heavy. Like, it weighs a lot. Usually I prefer a hardcover, but this was honestly hard to read because the weight of the book is like awkward to hold over your head while you're reading. Anyways, the writing in this book was so poor from like an expectation you have from a writer who's this well known. And I know that it's kind of, he's a very popular author now that has like a wider base of readers because of the books being made into movies, and just kind of the explosion sensation that the Da Vinci Code became. There's a lot of people that read Dan Brown books who aren't typical readers. So maybe that explains some of the kind of dumbing down that is done in this book. But the constant repetition of information to the reader drove me insane. It's like when you have in movies and the characters are constantly explaining the plot to you instead of showing the plot to you. That is what happens in this book. The number of times they explain Nordic science and like all of Catherine Solomon's ideas and just repeating things that have already happened in the books just to make sure you haven't forgotten that these things happened, as if you could, because they've already given you that information 6 other times. Hated it. I could not wait to be done this book. Part of the reason this book is so heavy is because it is over 600 pages. It is 675 pages, almost 700 pages. At least 30% of this book could have been cut out just based on repetition of information. I don't understand why it was so long. I don't understand the constant repetition. Dan Brown writes books about the character of Robert Langdon. This book is about Catherine Solomon with Robert Langdon as a background supporting character. So that was also frustrating. The plot, the kind of conspiracy theory element, I found not interesting at all. I don't know. I have no interest in looking up the actual science behind the science to see if there's even a legitimately minuscule, tangible, real element of this in the world. No interest. It did not make me want to. It was not thought-provoking in the way that it is intended to be. And the constant disbelief of Robert Langdon at the situations he's in. This man has been in the world of religious conspiracy, corporate conspiracy, freaking global industry, idea suppression of said scientific theories. He's been in danger. His life has been threatened. He's been on the brink of death so many times. And yet, in this book, it's like it's the first time any of this type of thing has ever happened to him. He should be smarter. He should be more suspicious. He should be more aware of what's going on. It makes absolutely no sense. I could not give this book a harder thumbs down. I do not recommend it. Do not waste your money on it. So if you think you might want to read it, wait, find it secondhand, get it from your library. Do not invest money in this book. And you like mystery, and you like conspiracy, and you like cover up, and you like somewhat kind of religious and science themes. If you like the character of Robert Langdon from the early books that Dan Brown wrote, do not go into this book with any level of expectation that it will meet the standards set by the early books. It doesn't. And I'm done with the character. I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed by how bad this was. And the first time, this is like the second time I've sat down to review all of these books. The last time it didn't work out, but the last time I also ranted on about this book because of how bad it was. And now I don't know how long I've been talking about it. It feels like a long time, so I'm just gonna put it off to the side, and now I can forget that it exists because I don't have to review it again. So do not recommend. Up next, we had a fun pivot to a more kind of seasonally appropriate read, which was An Enchanting Case of Spirits by Melissa Holtz. So this book is about Alyssa Mann isn't adventurous, not since her husband died, and she found herself the single mom of a teenage daughter. But there's no way to avoid celebrating the big 4-0. So when her best friends drag her out for drinks and a tarot reading, she throws caution to the wind and decides to see what the spirits have to say. It's all fun and games until she wakes up the next morning with a wicked hangover and a ghost standing at the end of her bed. Sheer panic sends her running for help from Nick West, the very attractive detective who lives next door. When he finds no one in her house, Alyssa has to accept that she did really see a ghost. As the dearly departed keep appearing, Alyssa and her friends do their best to learn how to control her newfound power, trading insults with ghosts, returning family heirlooms, and getting closer to the skeptical but helpful Nick is more fun than Alyssa imagined. But when looking into one ghost's past reveals unexpected and unwelcome facts about Alyssa's late husband's death, she discovers she may just be in over her head. So this was kind of a fun, lighthearted read after the disaster that was the last book. It also kind of was settling into fall and was just a nice kind of seasonal read. It was fun, it was lighthearted, the writing was fine, the characters were likable, you were like, okay, what's gonna happen? Something that I appreciated with this book was the pacing. Sometimes books are just very slow or indirect, or they drag out kind of conflict between the characters. This was very confrontational in like confronting topics or misunderstandings or whatever. They didn't drag that out. There was no kind of that trope of just misunderstanding or where if people had just communicated with each other, they would have avoided a whole fight. I hate when that happens in books. And so this book they just confront things straight, head on, time after time. So it moves very quickly. And there are kind of elements of that are a little bit of a stumble in the storytelling. But overall, if you're just looking for something fun and light to read, I would recommend this book. It was fun. It was topical to the season. And it wasn't, really bad or anything. The cover is kind of fun. It kind of reflects the lighthearted nature of the story. It is like there's mystery element of like murder solving and ghosts and tarot. And so all those things are in the book, with also an element of romance thrown in. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I would recommend it. The one caveat I have is this. I haven't looked it up, but I'm pretty sure it's a series. If it isn't yet, she's definitely working on the sequel because it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. It's not a cliffhanger to the story that is central to this novel, but about leading into a story about one of the side characters in this book, one of her friends. So if you're not looking to get into reading a series, you can still just read this first book and it will be fine. But there is kind of that, there's this loose thread that I'm kind of annoyed didn't get wrapped up, So that's that one. My cat is meowing. He's hungry. So I'm just going to pause this here and then come back for the next book. So the next book is a Brayden Weaver book that I do have a physical copy of. It just came out and it is Tourist Season. And of all of the Bryn Weaver books that I read this year, this one is probably my favorite. So let's tell you what it's about. Welcome to Cape Carnage. Visit once, stay forever. Cape Carnage is a seaside town of colorful houses, quirky shops, and an unusually high body count. With tourists comes trouble, and Harper Starling won't let anyone ruin her picture-perfect home. A skilled gardener with killer instincts, Harper protects her sanctuary and her aging mentor with a fading memory at any cost. Troublesome tourists don't check out of Carnage. They compost beneath Harper's award-winning flower beds. But Nolan Rhodes isn't your average tourist. Devilishly handsome, disarmingly charming, and skilled with a blade, Nolan is relentless in the pursuit of revenge. On every anniversary of the hit-and-run accident that fractured his life, Nolan slays another target. And he saved the best for last, the undeniably beautiful Harper Starling. The problem? Harper isn't the monster he expected, and she won't go down without a fight. When an amateur true crime investigator comes to Cape Carnage on the trail of a long-lost serial killer, Harper and Nolan strike an uneasy truce. If Nolan helps Harper protect her town, she'll keep quiet about his hunting habits, for now. But their alliance soon spirals into obsession, one that threatens to shatter every secret in Carnage, including their fragile love. I really liked this book. It was so much fun. And I'm going to talk about the aesthetics of this book since I have it here in front of me. And while I do that, you might be thinking, hey, book, you didn't talk about the aesthetics of the other books when you were reviewing them. And that's because it's easier when I have one in front of me. And I like the color palette of this book. I don't like the kind of cartoonish little mini character things they've done in the background. If these weren't here, I think I would like it a little bit more, but I also don't really like how this is kind of cartoonized in a way, and that is my issue with the other books. So I may have thought about picking up a copy of Butcher and Blackbird because that was the one that I liked the most out of the other three, even though I'm not sure I would ever reread it. But the cincher in that is I really am not a fan of how the covers of the books are stylized. It is, again, this kind of weird theming that is happening with books right now where the covers are very kind of sharp and cartoony, if that makes sense. It feels very much like it could be a kids show, like an advertisement for a kids show, even though the content of this book is very adult. And with the other books, I would say even more so. Maybe not. Maybe they're on the same level. It's kind of hard to remember. Maybe I just feel that way because I read those ones first, and so I was more acclimatized to the content level by the time that I read this one. But yeah, so the kind of light-hearted impression of the color palette and the styling of the cover of the book doesn't really relate as an accurate representation to the content. But what it does kind of give you an indication of is the humor, which is something that I've appreciated about all of Bryn Weaver's books, is the kind of unintentional and intentional humoristic elements in the story. They're very comedic, even though the subject matter is very severe. And I think that's what makes them so great. So I would absolutely recommend this book. Of all of her books that I've read, all of the ones that are in this video, this is the one that I would recommend to people. And of course, my cat would sneak back in and meow right when I was giving my recommendation. But absolutely would recommend this one to anyone who loves a dark romance story. Yeah, so I found it to be great. I think this was kind of the surprise win that resulted from me going down the like booktube rabbit hole of dark romance was this book. All of that got me to this book, which made it worth it. So yeah, now I've got 2 left, which was, unfortunately, we're going from a high to another low, which was Witches Get Stuff Done by Molly Harper. From the moment Riley Everett sets foot in Starfall Point, magic bubbled inside of her, but with only her late-aunt's journals and a cantankerous live-in ghost butler to instruct her on all things witchy, including her newly inherited Victorian haunted house, Riley seeks out a coven for sisterhood and support. The last person she expects to be drawn to is the town's frustrating yet ridiculously attractive head librarian. Addison Held knows almost everything there is to know about Starfall Point, but Shadow House has always been off limits, thanks to its elusive owner. If he can convince the new owner, Riley, to let him take a peek inside, there's so much he could learn. But as he gets closer to Riley, he's fascinated by her dazzling wit and fiery spirit. Edison will do whatever he can to help Riley keep her family legacy alive, especially if it means spending more time with a captivating new witch in town. Aesthetically, this book again has that weird kind of cartoony vibe to it that I don't like. But the idea of the book, when you read the back synopsis, sounds interesting. The story does not live up to it. It is not well written. The characters are not well developed. The kind of romance element is just, they fall into it immediately, and it's kind of obsessive and weird. And sorry about that, my cat started to get really meowy. He wanted to go outside, so I've gone and let him out. But where this book had that like really quick conflict resolution of characters, this book also kind of does that sometimes, but badly. And then it also, at the kind of middle, there is a confusion or a miscommunication that kind of blows up out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, well, they're just gonna resolve this immediately like they've done all the other times, but then they don't. And yeah, I think the story development, there wasn't enough lead up, there wasn't enough fleshing out of the characters or the story or the plot. It was just very rushed, and it was like someone wrote an outline for a book and then just kind of jammed it all together. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but from the back of the book, if the story had been, it was like they spent more time writing this than actually developing the story. I don't know. There is also an unexpected spice scene in this book, which I didn't expect at all. And it is the most awkwardly written secondhand embarrassment experience that I've had reading a book that had a love scene in it. I was literally like, I felt so awkward reading it. I was just like, it felt like it was written like a fan fiction, or like a teenager had written it or something. It was just weird and so out of place in the book. Like, just had no right being in the book at all. Like, this book was not a book that should have had a love scene in it. Even though the characters are like adults and they would obviously have like a romantic relationship, but it was just so out of place. So a whole bunch of things combined to make this just a thumbs down for me. I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't live up to the synopsis. It's just, I'm just like, ugh. That's how I feel about it. So far, this whole slate of books has been very much a mixed bag. But don't worry, we've got one more book, which was The Dead Guy Next Door by Lucy Score. And this also, I'm just going to talk about the aesthetics right off the bat. Again, has that weird cartoony kind of like The Nanny intro vibe, which I don't really like. You know, I'm not a fan of this current theme styling of books that publishers are going on. Why are they making everything look like a cartoon? But I actually really like this book. So A Nice Normal Life. Is that too much to ask? For Riley Thorne, it is. So yeah, both of the characters in these last two books are named Riley, so it's unfortunate that I read them together, so just don't get it confused. For Riley Thorne, it is. Divorced, broke, living with a pack of elderly roommates, and those hallucinations Riley's diligently ignoring. Her mom is convinced Riley must be clairvoyant. Just when things seem like they can't get worse, a so hot it should be illegal private investigator shows up on her doorstep, looking for the guy next door, who turns up murdered. Investigator Nick Santiago doesn't play well with others. He's a rebel, a black sheep, a man who prefers a buffet of options to being stuck with the same entree every night, if you catch his drift. But when the pretty, possibly psychic Riley lands at the top of the suspect list for this murder, Nick immediately volunteers to find out who done it. He likes solving mysteries. It has nothing to do with wanting to flex his heroic muscles for Riley. At least, that's what he's trying to convince himself. Nick and Riley must join forces to find out who really pulled the trigger, all while keeping a by-the-book, grudge-holding detective at bay, and dealing with the gorgeous stranger claiming he's arrived to help Riley hone her psychic gifts. All before the killer decides to turn his sights on Riley. To compare this book to this book, I would say the synopsis of this book reads a lot better than the actual book. The synopsis of this book reads worse than the actual book. I would say when I read this, I was kind of like so about whether or not I thought the book would be good. But the actual book story was a lot better than I would have expected it to be. It also is a thicker book, so clearly there's a lot more room to develop the characters and flesh out the storyline than in the previous book. But just overall, the writing quality, the character development, the interaction of the characters back and forth, the romantic element of the book, the mystery element of the book, the like psychic kind of witchy element of the book, everything was just better. This was it was just a solid book. After kind of like all of the ups and downs of books that I've been reading, I would recommend this book. it is just very solid. I think her kind of resistance to her gift and her relationship with her family and kind of the difference between her and her dad and her mom and her sister and Nick, their interactions together, it was just very fun. It was very playful. It was very like just enjoyable to read, you know. Of all of these books, I would say probably my top recommendations are going to be these three. Of any of the books that I have gone over today, these are going to be kind of the most central to the books that I would normally read in theming, in like story and just enjoyment level. These are kind of the three. So if you want kind of danger, murder, serial killer romance, you got this one. If you want like solid mystery, suspenseful, more classic mystery, end of story. And if you want something fun and more light and enjoyable, but that also has kind of a spooky seasonal vibe, it's not really spooky at all. It's just kind of like has that theme of like psychics and kind of tarot and the mystical element, but you want it to be like sitcom mystery. That's how I would describe that book, where there is real life murder, but it doesn't feel like real life murder. It feels like a show you're watching or like a story you're reading. Yeah, so that's where I'm gonna end this wrap up. However this turned out, however the audio turned out, it's going up regardless. So if it's terrible, feel free to let me know if it's way too long. But I just needed to get these up and get this done so it would stop kind of lurking in the back of my mind and I could get back to doing something that feels more fun. I am enjoying reading still. So the current book I'm reading is How to Murder Your Employer. I think I'm going to DNF that book. I'm just not liking it. It'll be the first one that I've kind of started and not finished for a very long time. And I'm just not appreciating the writing style. It's not that it's bad. It's just not driving with me. It's not to my taste. So we'll see about whatever the next book review is. I'll let you know how that one ended up panning out if it's not that one. So I'll see you in the whatever comes next. Bye.